Hi, I'm Syra Shakir, and this podcast sets out to decolonize your mind by exploring topics such as anti-racist practice, learning from lived experiences, working to dismantle structures that perpetuate power and dominance, deconstructing knowledge, developing a socially just consciousness, empowerment, being agents of change, and doing things differently. In the words of Malcolm X, who I refer to as Malik El-Shabazz, education is the passport to the future, for tomorrow belongs to those who prepare for it today. Welcome to this podcast. So I'm super honoured to be here with the legendary Professor Kehinde Andrews. Also a bit nervous, so bear with me, but I can see lots of faces in the audience that I recognise, so thanks everyone for coming. So, Kehinde, you don't need an introduction. However, I am going to share a brief introduction. So, Professor Kehinde Andrews is a British academic and author specialising in Black Studies. He is Professor of Black Studies in the School of Social Sciences at Birmingham City University, led the establishment of the first Black Studies programme in Europe, and Kehinde is founder of the Harambee Organisation of Black Unity and co-chair of the UK Black Studies Association. Kehinde writes a lot. A lot, yeah. So your books include, and obviously this is not just an exhaustive list, The New Age of Empire, How Racism Still Rules the World, Back to Black, Retelling Black Radicalism for the 21st Century, and Resisting Racism, Race Inequality, and the Black Supplementary School Movement. And your recent book, look at my post-it notes, The Psychosis of Whiteness, Surviving the Insanity of a Racist World, is described as a rational takedown of the myths that uphold white supremacy and systems and people that promote it across our society. And what an awesome read it is. So,
thank you.
No, thank you. So this is going to be like a conversation style. So Kehinde, we've got quite a few questions here. I'm not sure if I'll get through all of them, but...
It's going to be easier than Piers Morgan.
I don't like that guy's name. It goes right through me just thinking about him. But yeah, I've got quite a few questions here, and I might take them in different orders and see how the flow goes. So, okay. So this is a juicy one. In your view, Kehinde, what are the best ways of targeting structural racism within the university and or other organisations?
That is, you just started off with, what do we do?
Yeah.
Right? I mean, it's hard. So I want to answer positively. But it's very difficult. As somebody who has spent the last 20 years probably in different universities, different higher education, the structural problems are so much a part of what the university is, that I would say it's almost impossible to do anything about them. Right? There's a reason why the problems keep reoccurring. The more that we do, the more they come back. It's because the university in particular is based on white supremacy. The European universities. The very premise that a university is. So think about science, what makes science, rationality. It's not a coincidence that the dead white men that we still revere, all of them pretty much, even Marx, believed that black people were inferior and white people were superior, and there was a hierarchy of human beings. That's not a coincidence. That actually goes to the heart of what European knowledge is, and that is the basis of what the university is. So when you see all of these inequalities still play out now, even though universities are more diverse than they were, in fact, black students are overrepresented in universities, but underrepresented in post-92 universities, underrepresented in master's, postdoctoral level, underrepresented, basically the higher you go, the less of us there are. I mean, there's 160 black professors in the UK, which is basically one at each university.
Yeah.
And I always joke, there's so few of us that we can't all get on a plane together, just in case it crashes, right? There'd be none left. And it wouldn't even be a big plane. Like, it'd be one of the first little planes with propellers. So, like, it's not, and when you look at those stats, it's not that's not a coincidence. That happens because of what the university is. So when I actually gave my students every year, Black Studies, first semester, the question is, can Black Studies decolonize the university? And they all answer no, because they can't. Yeah. Actually, what we're trying to do is to colonize a space in the university to do good things. But the university is still the university. It hasn't got any, even my own university hasn't got any less racist since I've been there. In fact, I don't want to get sacked. No, I actually do want to get sacked. But so ask me and I'll tell you some stories.
You mentioned it in your book.
But yeah, we do. You can't decolonize something which is fundamentally based on white supremacy. So the best you can do is say, what can we do in this institution to do useful work? Yeah, I think that's the task, not trying to fix it.
Yeah. So just vibing on that thing about the good work and what we can do in our spaces, because for me this kind of speaks to those grassroots movements, right? What things do you think we can try to do? What are the kind of actions that we can take in terms of all of the agency that we've got as individuals, as a collective, as a group, staff, students?
Mm-hmm. So Black Studies originally emerges in the US and has this radical demand for a community component. Because if you're going to make it really simple, the big problem with the university is its eliteness, is the fact that it is the ivory tower, is separate. What gives me I actually don't really like the title professor too much. I refer to it as like chief constable.
Okay.
Similar, right? Police, we'd love to talk about the police as being institutionally racist. Yeah. But where did they get their ideas from? Yeah. The university, right? And so what made me professor was not anything, it wasn't just the work I did in the community. It was the fact that I could, go to conferences, which is just other academics, write journal articles. You've got students in here. Do anybody like reading journal articles? Hands up if you like reading journal articles. This is an exciting thing for me to do. Okay, there's a couple of people. All right, there's a few. Hands up if you hate reading journal articles. Be honest. I'm not going to mark you down because you don't like it. I hate reading them. I hate writing them. I try not to do it at all. Right? Because there's a way of writing in them which is so elitist. It makes it so complicated for no reason. Yeah. It's just, I honestly hate it. I have to do it for my job, so I do. But I really don't. I really don't want to do it. And so now one of the things, it's, when we think about universities now and breaking down the ivory tower, it's not just about access to what there is. Yeah. So, like, for example, making journal articles open access. Yeah. Nobody's still going to read them. Yeah. You can make it free. I actually tried this. I left a load of the journal. What journal was it? Sociology journal, which I was, because I was in the society, I got copies for years. I've never read any of them, to be honest. And I left them out in the room for like 3 weeks and nobody took them, right? Making it opening access like that isn't doing anything because it's still the same problem. It's actually making it actually accessible. So do communities feel they can engage in the knowledge? Can they come onto campus? Even think about that. Universities, even though students are supposedly customers, all the money comes from the state. These are state-run institutions that we have swipe card access people can't get into. These are the problems. Essentially, you have to bring the community in and make it a resource for community. But there's a lot of barriers in doing that. But that will, if I was to say do one thing, that will be the thing. Yeah.
Community engagement as well. Yeah. You just got me thinking about the journal article stuff and how it's so prescribed, the way they're written, the expectations. And I was sharing with some colleagues just recently. I won't go on too much about this, but the feedback that I got was that there was too much emotion. It was too much emotive language in the article, so I had to strip all that out and make it bland and boring.
Yeah, you shouldn't be passionate. Okay. Yeah. You know how many times someone says, I'll go and talk somewhere and they say, oh wow, you're so passionate. Yeah. I'm like, well, of course I'm passionate. I spent all my life doing this stuff. Yeah. What are you expecting? But they expect the detached, dry, intellectual, and that's the problem. Yeah. That's the problem. If you think about the audience of our work, if the audience is just in the university, what's the point, right? Yeah. The audience should be much broader, organically, and not just to have engagement, but really importantly, that makes your work different. Yeah. Because those audiences will have different expectations, they'll have different questions, they'll have different ideas. It actually challenges you differently. If you only take challenges from inside the academy, then all that knowledge is deeply problematic.
Yeah. Thank you. Right, so where do I go next? I wanted to explore your thoughts around anti-racist training or anti-racist education, anti-racist CPD, for example. And in the context of obviously universities or workplaces. So it's a kind of like a two-parter really in this topic. What do you think the limits are or the extent of this type of approach or this work? And where should we focus our efforts?
Okay, so I'm very critical. So if you read Psychosis of Whiteness, I'm very critical of anti-racism training.
Yeah.
But then that's because of what it is, not necessarily the idea. So there are massive deficits in knowledge that we have because of universities, because of media, because of schools, etc. And I'll do lots of these corporate gigs. They'll bring me in to talk, and then just get a lecture. You just get some information about stuff you probably haven't heard before. That's kind of useful, right? People need to know stuff and conduit knowledge. But that is not what anti-racism training typically is. It's about... So, okay, I'll give you... When I was on this TV show, what was it called? We Are Black and British, which is on Netflix. Yeah. If you want to see it, ironically, it's all black people, but if you want to see the Psychosis of Whiteness, that's the best place to go. Go watch that show. My days. Anyway, so on that show, they cut out a lot of the show. And one of the bits they cut out was we went to do diversity training at a company in London. And it was a company that's basically G4S with better PR, basically.
Okay.
Terrible place. Anyway, so we go in there. And the diversity training is all, are we saying people's names properly and attitudes and where are you from? And I'm sitting there like, okay, this is interesting. The person sitting to my left, his job was care and custody, head of care and custody. So I was like, well, what's custody? Immigration, detention, and deportation.
Right.
So I was like, well, look, you can be nice to my nan while you're deporting her, but I don't think that makes it any better, right? So much of that internal nonsense about, are we being nice to each other? But actually, you're not thinking about the bigger picture of what are we actually doing, right? And this company is a company which heavily security, cleaning, care work, and immigration, all four of those are deeply impacted in institutional racism, right? There's a reason they outsource those jobs and your pension goes and your working conditions get terrible to companies like this, right? So if anti-racism training is just how are we nicer to each other, then what's the point? It must be much, 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 much broader than that. And so, to be honest, most of the anti-racism training that I've seen has been deeply performative. And in fact, at my workplace, the only anti-racism training we have to do at my workplace is a tick box, literally a tick box exercise that you do
online.
Right? Yeah, I haven't done it for 10 years.
Just love an online.
I mean, online, do this. It's supposed to be mandatory. I haven't done it for 10 years. I'm now getting emails telling me to do it, and I'm not going to do it. I think that would be great. If I get fired for not doing the tick box exercise, this will be wonderful. So I'm going to see how far I can push it. But those that's not serious, not genuine, right? So a lot of it's just performance to say you've done something without actually doing something, unfortunately.
Yeah. So in terms of like where we should focus our efforts, thinking about the bigger picture, how do we frame that? What's your advice to us in terms of getting that bit right around anti-racist training? And I don't think you've seen anti-racist training that me, Rick and Sean deliver. Yeah, but we'll skip over that bit, I think, maybe. Yeah, we'll come back. Yeah, we'll come back to that later. But yeah.
Well, the idea of doing something isn't a bad idea. Like, there's things you can do with it. And I'm sure there are definitely better models than we have at my place and that I've seen in places. Like I said, all you can do is use the spaces and tools that you have to do things. So for instance, I wouldn't say companies shouldn't do it. I would just say, look, if you're in a company, particularly someone that have money, I mean, they will spend tens of thousands on some of this stuff. You could do something genuine with it. So I'm not saying get rid of it. I'm saying take it over. Actually, let's just do something else. Because I promise you, the companies don't care. They just want to do something. They just want to spend the money. Is there a way to capture that money and to rethink how you can do that? Can you use that to support not anti-racist the trainers? Because I think the trainers, that's the con, to be honest. Can you use that to support? There are some great organizations do some great work. Can you use that to support them? Can you actually do something actually genuinely interesting that actually teaches people stuff they would otherwise not be aware of? I'd say use that budget and try and colonize. That's what I say, colonize the budget. Let's use their language for our things.
Yeah.
There's resources out there. Can you take them? And especially now, it's become a big thing.
Yeah.
Don't spend $75,000 on Robin DiAngelo. That would be a mistake. Do spend it on something useful.
Yeah. So, okay, so I think it's similar theme here, actually. What's your view of initiatives such as the Race Equality Charter, the REC for universities, things such as the Access and Participation Plan, and initiatives such as positive action recruitment that you might see at universities and indeed in other workplaces, and Race Equality Charter equivalents in other organisations, potentially?
Again, nice idea, but really they did become, particularly the REC. I won't name, maybe I should name some of the universities, but some of the universities that have REC have got the mark.
Yeah.
I'm like, how did you get the mark? Like, I don't know. I literally just visited one university. I say, no, UCL. UCL is terrible. I'm sorry. Every time I go to UCL, the students...
I'm going there next week.
Yeah, well, the students say it's terrible, the staff say it's terrible. You walk in the place, you walk in the place, it's just racist. Like, you just walk in like, wow. You can just feel the racism.
Yeah.
That's UCL. And historically, it's the founder of eugenics for me. Honestly, historically and presently, UCL is no measure for anything on race equality. Yet somehow it's one of the first places to get the bronze race equality mark. It's meaningless. Unfortunately, it's meaningless. It's not a bad idea in theory, but in practice, it becomes just something you can get and tick and you just go through the motions, and universities can get them, and it looks good. And also you think, why are they doing it? It is to look good. It is marketing and it is PR. So unfortunately, that is what most of these markets are. And access and participation plan, again, is a nice idea, but if it's not enforced, what's the point? Like, if you can just every 5 years say, oh, mate, we didn't meet our targets and we still got these problems, what's the point in doing it? There's not narrating the problem isn't going to solve anything. So until there's actually enforcement, there's punishment.
Yeah.
And I haven't heard any talk of that happening, right? Like, you shouldn't be able to charge as much if you haven't fixed your attainment awarding yet. That would be something. Then quickly you feed people to fix their awarding yet. Yeah. But until that happens, it's just a way to perform. And unfortunately, that has been what race equality in the UK has been generally. And I would imagine it's similar. No, I not imagine. I know for a fact it's similar in other industries.
Yeah. Do you know, I just want to ask you a little bit more about this, right? So I know before we came on, it was the whole thing around interest convergence in critical race theory as one of the tenets, and using that as a space potentially to create change or get that movement going to do things in a positive way. What's your view around that in terms of things like the Race Equality Charter? And I don't know if we need to explain that term a little bit more of interest convergence for the audience, but...
Yeah, so critical race theory has some useful ideas. One of them is that changes don't happen because of the moral argument. They never do. Historically, it's never happened that you convince somebody through your persuasion. We've been on the right side of the argument for 500 years, and they haven't really got us anywhere. Changes happen when you make the interests of those seeking the change converge with the interests of those with the power, right? That's how change happens, right? And so what we should be thinking about then is not the moral case to the argument, because there's no argument really against equality. It's how do you make things connect?
Yeah.
And in fact, to be honest, that's how we got Black Studies. Black Studies would frankly have been impossible under the old regime where you didn't have fees, because when the government was paying most of the money for the student fees, there was a cap on student numbers, which meant that if we were going to have a Black Studies degree, I have to take students from somewhere else. That's not going to happen. Like, I promise you, no university say they would take students from law or psychology. Not going to happen. When students started paying the full fees, in theory at least, the cap came off, so the university could recruit as many people as they wanted. It's actually really easy. I just went, look, we've got all the black staff. We're the only place that can do this in the country. You can make some money. This will look good. Interest convergence. There you go.
Right.
And the same people, and this is why the idea of allies and that doesn't matter. The same people have had massive problems with and who were not allies in any way, greenlit and supported Black Studies because it was in the interest of the institution and their job.
Yeah.
That's how you get change. You do not get change from no, we didn't get Black Studies because some manager went, oh yeah, you really convinced us on the argument.
Yeah.
It was about money and prestige, and also it fit the they love putting in the brochure, and the only black studies degree. I must be honest. So yeah, but that's how you get change. That's how change happens. So if you want something to happen, that's how you should think about it. And interestingly, with students, I mean, students now, what do they call? I don't know if they do. I will say my old VC. I haven't spoken. The new VC hasn't done this yet. But the old VC used to literally would come to us on open day and say, "Have you seen many customers?" And that's how they refer to customers. Like, this is body customers. And as customers, you have lots of power. And in some of these places, like my uni, 50% of the population is minority. So if you say, "Look, we want these changes," they'll give you the changes. They have to. They ain't got a choice. They don't resist us, but they listen to the students. Students have a huge amount of power. And particularly in places where they're the majority, you actually can get way more than you think. And that's how you make the interest come back. Yeah.
So maybe there's some more work that we can do with students in order to support some of those changes.
But unfortunately, students tend to be the most neoliberal part of universities, if I'm honest. And this isn't even a criticism of students. It's just saying, as a young person coming into a university, you are going to look at the facilities, the sports thing. Do they have a Starbucks? So I guess Starbucks now is less popular because of Palestine. But students are if you think about why the university is pushing facilities, buildings, not professors, it's because 17-year-olds aren't going, "Who's my professor?" Right? And that's not really their fault. That's just what you expect. I didn't do when I was 17. I would have gone for the shiny building rather than the established professor. So part of that is, I guess, working with the students once they're in.
Yeah.
Because they actually know, because people do get it. When they're here, they get it. They understand the quality of the course, etc., etc., etc. So yeah, definitely we can do much more work with students, I think.
Yeah. So, okay then. So actually this leads quite nicely into my next question. So what's your advice to students from global majority communities to succeed at university?
It depends what you mean by succeed.
Well, yeah. Well, so, okay, survive.
Survive.
Get through. Yeah.
No.
I actually had survive in the next question when I was referring to staff.
Okay.
So let's use that. Yeah.
I mean, so it's actually, because I'll go to places and I'll hear, every time I go to university, there'll be at least one student who says, "I really want to do this for my dissertation, but my supervisor's not letting me do it." And it's a back and forth. And my advice is always the same. Just do what they say. Honestly, because understanding what the university degree is, it's just, anyway, there's certain hoops you have to jump through those hoops. It's like I said, I don't like writing journal articles, but guess what I have to do? Write journal articles. You have to do the white stuff. That's what I call it. You have to do the white stuff. I couldn't get to where I am without doing the white stuff, and you can't let that define who you are. You're just saying, look, there are certain things I have to tick off to get through this thing, and it's 100% instrumental. But as a student, you also have lots and lots of free time, right? You have a lot of availability to do other things. You can educate yourself on various things. And so in order to survive, get through, get your degree, you have to kind of go along with some things you wouldn't necessarily want to. But you also have the privilege and the space to do all kinds of other things.
Yeah.
Right? So, I got my degree in psychology. I mean, the whitest psychology that's ever existed. I mean, I was the only black person in the building in my psychology career. That's how bad it was where I was. And I had to do the nonsense, but you just do it, get it done. But this is also the same time I was learning about black psychology, doing ACS, doing all this other stuff as well. So you just kind of have to do what you have to do, but then use your privilege to build your other life.
Yeah.
And it also, that will then help you to get through the mundane stuff, right?
Yeah.
If all you have is the mundane, the white stuff, you'll go off the rails.
Yeah.
But if you just have that and have other things, like community, organization, stuff like that, that's going to help you to not just survive, actually thrive.
Yeah.
But what I'm trying to say, thrive despite the space rather than because of it.
Yeah.
And maybe I'm being too negative about universities. I don't know.
Well, there's some real practical advice there. And all the work that I've been doing with students over the last few years, these are the sorts of things that students talk about, the stuff that sits outside of the lectures, the stuff that sits outside of the assessment that they get involved in, and what helps to build their sort of sense of belonging and feeling part of that community at university. So on the same kind of vibe, but in relation to staff, what would be your advice to staff from global majority communities to survive in the academy? And should they even try to do so?
I can't say no because I'm a professor of this. So while I'm still here, I have to say yes, you have to survive. Again, it's similar, right? It's understanding there are certain things you just have to do. there are certain battles you're not going to win. And this is from experience. I probably tried to fight too many battles that you can't win, and I've learned from this. There are battles you cannot let go at all, and you have to fight those battles 100%. But there is a lot of stuff you're going to just have to do. It's just how it is. But we also, I know it's not the easiest job, and there's lots of pressures. I'm just going to be honest, though, it's also not the hardest job. Like, there are much harder jobs we could be doing with far more constraints. So think about being a teacher at a school, for example. Yeah. You think I could do what I do if I was a teacher at a school? No chance, like zero chance. I'll be fired very, very, very quickly. So we actually we are in one of the few professions where you do have some flexibility. Yeah. We started a Black Studies course like 10 years ago. And I've been saying the same things for 10 years. So it's not like I just started saying these things now, I'm professor and well-known. Yeah. You go back 10 years ago, I was saying the same things. So you can carve out a career by doing that. And I'd actually also say you can carve out a better career by doing that. Yeah. I remember when we started Black Studies, there was about 30 Black academics sitting around the table. It was 10 years ago. And I was like, we're going to do Black Studies. And then I swear everybody was like, no, it's too, let's call it something else. This is something different. It's too much. You can't do that. I was like, no, we're just going to do it. Believe me, just doesn't do it. And doing it, that's what made my career go way faster. Because it's different. It's completely unique. Like, it's the only Black Studies degree in Europe. Like, because it's different and distinctive. So it wasn't a case where I had to say, well, it's either do what I want to do or do this. It's like, no, I'm going to do what I want to do. I still tick those boxes, etc., etc. But actually staying credible and true to myself, ourselves, has actually then meant my career is better as well, right? Because it is distinctive. So I would also say that don't be afraid to do something distinctive and different. Yeah, that will stand out. Not always. I'm not going to lie. It's not always the easiest. Yeah. But it's possible as long as you keep ticking along with the other metrics as well. Right? Yeah. And that's how you find. And the other piece of advice would be, look, even now, we still don't get, Black Studies does not get 1/10 of the recognition internally that it should do. Yeah. I mean, I'm not to be arrogant about this. We do some things that like just unbelievable what we've achieved. Not just me, the whole staff of us in the university. And internally, it's basically no recognition. But it doesn't matter to me or to any of us because we have so much recognition externally. Because we built community externally, internationally. Like, who cares? Like, we're not going to win the internal BCU awards for stuff. Okay. Well, we've got a whole fraternity of people around the world who are connected with and doing different things with and winning European level awards. That's what sustains us, right? Because we have this extensive community outside and we're not just relying on inside. Because the inside you'll never get the recognition support that you deserve. Yeah.
I do hear a lot of staff talk about that kind of experience. So, I mean, that external influence that you've had and the reach and impact you've got, tell us a little bit about that, Kehinde, because I'm really interested in that.
Yeah, so I mean, one of the things that we really were keen to do with Black Studies is Black Studies is in its scope heavily influenced by the United States, but then I got some money AHRC to do a research network where we brought scholars from Africa, Asia, Africa, Latin America, Caribbean, America as well. We built this kind of network, which we still have as well. That's allowed us to really do different stuff, get invited to so many different places around the world to talk, to speak, to do work with students and staff, etc., etc. We recently won a European level award for critical thinking, the Evans Foundation, which actually gave us money. So we started a podcast, Make It Plain podcast, in combination with the Harambee Organization of Black Unity. They organised, and that money came from this European award that we won. And so it's just a lot of recognition, like in terms of the people that want to work with us and the people work that we're doing. We've actually just end of the month, we're publishing a book with Kimberly Crenshaw on blackness at the intersection. So Kim came over. Kim's like a friend now, say Kim. Kim came over and we did like 3-day workshops. We workshopped the book, etc., etc. But that's because like we just have these networks, so we just established over the work. So that kind of stuff is great. And that I said that's where we get our nourishment from, and then our recognition from. Yeah, and for the students, I mean, that must be just such an awesome experience. Part of all of that. I mean, wow, Yeah, I mean, they get to see so many people come through the university. So through campus, we've had Kim's come, Patricia Collins has come. I'm trying to. Kathleen Cleaver came. More people just come to BCU because it's a place with that standing in Black Studies. Yeah. So it's a great place to work. In that sense, it's a great place to work and a great place to be. Yeah. And to do stuff.
That sounds fantastic. Right. So, okay. So I want to ask you a little bit about safe spaces, right? So we hear this term quite a lot, don't we?
Mm-hmm.
Safe spaces at university, creating safe spaces for students, creating safe spaces for staff. Safe for who? And what are the conditions to create safety? So I wanted to get your thoughts on that.
That's interesting. Is there a safe space at the university? I kind of want to say yes, there is. So there is or there isn't. I mean, I think you definitely need to have spaces. No, let me say this. You definitely can create safe spaces. You 100% can. Like,
Yeah.
Even as student groups. I mean, ACS isn't what it used to. No, ACS actually is exactly what it used to be. But African Caribbean Society is mostly party at most universities. But even, this is why I went to university a while ago, and we had an African Caribbean Society in the University of Bath. That's what, the University of Bath is where I went to university. Oh, God. I'm not joking. I was one of 6 African Caribbean students in the first year.
All right.
Full stop. Like every course, there was 6 of them. Like it was so white. It was, and I'm from Birmingham, so it was a bit of a shock. But the ACS was really powerful because you just had everybody was like all the black students were in it, and it was a really great space, like a really different, like a, it's just really powerful space, different spaces. You can always have those spaces in a place. And I say in Black Studies, we've created a space that I would say is largely safe, right?
Yeah.
We managed to recruit staff. I mean, the key thing to that was recruiting people. And again, the reason that we were able to recruit people was because I got hired 10 years ago, and it was the most senior research person. And I said, look, our research is going to be Black Studies. And that's what we're going to do.
Yeah.
And so therefore, when we're hiring people, we got to hire Black Studies people.
Yeah.
So we hired 3 Black women in a row, which I'm going to guess has never happened at any university ever, and probably never will, given the racism in universities.
Yeah.
And so if you come to Black Studies, we've got lots of staff. The classroom is very, very different. One of the podcast episodes of Make It Plain, the last one we did in the series, was students talking about just how different it was to come in. In fact, I think one of the students mentioned that the first question I asked when she came in to first year was, do you have any hand cream? And she was like, oh yeah, I feel like, and that's what the space is like. I have hand cream with me today, so
Yeah.
I won't be asking you for hand cream. But yeah, it's different. Yeah, if you come into the that is a safe space, and it is important to have those spaces. But it's also important to recognize the limitations of that when you're not in those spaces. What does that mean, etc., etc.
Yeah. And what about for staff then? So safe spaces for staff.
There's a moment. No, again, there's moments. So yeah, there's definitely moments, and I think part of that is this is why the community component is really important. So like when we have events, so we'll have events, big events, and this mostly community people. So this was actually took a while, took longer than you think, because people are quite suspicious of the community. Of the university, and so it took a bit to say, well, look, come to the base, and now you've got like a mailing list of like 2,000 people. So when we put an event out, it's mostly students come, some staff come, but it's mostly community.
Yeah. So
the space is different, and it feels different. And so I'd say those are the very rare moments where, as a member of staff, I feel safe.
Okay.
Because I had my inaugural lecture, and I told the university you cannot organize it. No, I just organized it. I just said, I'll organize it. I tell you about it, and then we'll just run like that. Right? Even the dean was mad at me, and he insisted on coming and speaking.
Right.
I said, I don't want you to speak. Why are you speaking? But he came along anyway. But because of the way the space was, I felt 100% safe. I was cracking jokes at the dean the whole night. And because it was a different space. Right?
Yeah.
So you can do it, but that's why, again, community component is really important. Outside of that, I don't know, I'd say outside of that, to be honest, I don't think there's that many safe spaces for staff. Although the classroom as well, so Black Studies classrooms, I would say are safe spaces as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, and actually, interestingly, that would have been the first time. So most of my career, I haven't taught Black Studies. I've taught other things. So early on, in fact, my first job was teaching early childhood studies. Which talk about blagging to get a job. I know nothing about G, but I managed to get a job. One of the first classes I taught was creativity in the early years. Where I was basically just reading out children's stories. It was great. I don't know. It was fun. Pretending to be a bear. No, racism is real, but like honestly, ask how many black or brown staff their first job was in an actual discipline like sociology, psychology, history. we have to start like in the wilderness, like on early childhood, working with children and families. It took me like years to get to a sociology position at BCU, which isn't even like a established, like a religious place, because the racism's so bad. Like I applied for a job at I'll just name it, like wider, Aston once, and there was a lecturer post, senior lecturer post. I was established at this point.
Yeah.
So I was overqualified for lecturer, but I was like, let me apply for lecturer because, racism, isn't it? So I applied for lecturer, don't get the job. Then I hear they've reopened the applications because there was nobody qualified. Right. Like, okay, now I know. That's how bad it is. So yeah, I've had a career of teaching different things, and the classrooms aren't safe. They're not safe at all. I mean, I always put Black studies in out there, but there's always some complaints. I'm like, why are you talking about this? Why are you talking about that? I had a student cry once because I mentioned Malcolm X and Martin Luther King, and we're talking about collective advocacy, which I thought was obviously relevant. But no, the student was crying, like literally in tears. I don't understand why it's relevant. Da, da, da. So I have to say, until Black studies, the classroom was not a safe place, really.
Yeah.
It's only in Black studies now where it's completely different, where it is a safe space now.
Yeah. Thank you. I was going to ask you another question, but because you mentioned Malcolm X, who I absolutely adore and who I refer to as Malik El-Shabazz, I wanted you to tell us a little bit about your kind of, your love for Malik El-Shabazz as well, because we were talking about it earlier, and obviously you're writing a new piece, aren't you, about Malcolm X? So the next book, so Malcolm's birthday would be, 100th birthday is next May, so the next book will drop for that, and it is a book that is, what is Malcolm? For me, Malcolm X is the most important social theorist of the 20th century. Like, really, really, really. If you want to understand race, racism, Blackness, activism, Malcolm is the place you go to. Malcolm 100% is the foundation of my academic work, always has been. And so the book really just drills down what it is about what is Malcolm's theory, what would he say today, etc., etc. And why I love Malcolm really tells you why I don't like academia. Because he's like the complete opposite, right? You have somebody who doesn't have any, he left formal education, I want to say 7th grade. There was a teenager, no degree, no qualifications in that sense, educates himself, reads in prison, etc., etc., etc. But the insights are, honestly, when I read critical race theory for the first time, I'd already heard all of it, because Malcolm said it like 60 years ago. They literally predicted all of it, said, if you go down the civil rights path, what we'll end up with is token integration. It won't really get better for most people. It will get better for a lucky few, and we'll be stuck in the same place, right? And that's basically what critical race theory is. Malcolm gave you that 60 years ago. The analysis is absolutely spot on, even now. So I'd recommend, American elections are coming up soon, right? The ballot or the bullet, the 64 speech from Malcolm, that will explain what's happening more than any other speech you'll listen to. Go listen to it, listen to the ballot or the bullet, you'll be like, okay, now I understand. But the reason that is because Malcolm, we called the podcast and the website we have Make It Plain, because that's kind of Malcolm's motto. It's more than a motto. He's saying, look, you have to make it plain, make it understandable, make it connect. Because Malcolm spends all of his time talking to mass audiences, hundreds of thousands of people in the community. And if you're doing that, you can't come like a professor of language. You have to be engaging, right? You have to be simple and break down complicated things simply. So Malcolm says things simply, but they're really, really, really complex, right? And this is the whole point of the book. So look, this sounds simple, right? But actually, no, it's really complex. And also, the other thing that makes Malcolm theory better is that he is constantly talking to the people who are suffering from racism. Yeah. So he's getting the feedback from them. Whereas if you compare that to the majority of Black academics, where do we get our feedback from? The academy. How could you understand Blackness, race, etc., the grassroots from just talking to it's not going to happen. Which is why so much of our theory is terrible. I'm not going to name names. I'm going to avoid temptation to name names. But there are famous Black academics who I can't understand what they're talking about. Yeah. So what's the point? Like, what are we doing? Like, if you just can't read something and go, okay, I get it. And the reason why is not, and here is not just an argument for you should make things simple. My actual argument is when you actually do get behind some of what these people are saying, it doesn't make any sense at all. Yeah. It's actually bad theory anyway, because it's so disconnected from the struggles that it's in. Whereas if you've got someone like Malcolm, Claudia Jones, completely different, rooted in community, therefore understand the Black Panther Party.
has some of the best social theory you'll find. Why? Because they're on the front lines and they understand it and get it. So that separation of university and community, particularly on things like race, it's not just immoral, it's actually bad theory. You just produce lots and lots and lots of bad theory that we should essentially do away with.
Yeah. Can't wait for the book to come out. Really looking forward to it. So I've got another question then. So the global struggle and racialized capitalism, how is this reflected or embodied in universities? And you might want to talk about organizations outside of the academy as well, potentially.
Yeah, a simpler way to put it, in the way that I show this to 14-year-olds that go to schools. If you look at a map of the world, you will see that the poorest part of the world is where the black people live, right? So-called sub-Saharan Africa. The richest part of the world is the West, white people live. And there is this hierarchy in between. Yeah. That is white supremacy, right? It's about wealth. It's about who has money, who doesn't have money, who has access, etc., etc. If you also do the same map by life expectancy, you see the same thing, right? So-called sub-Saharan Africa is the only place in the world where life expectancy is in the 60s or below. So, for example, Nigeria, which is about a fifth of the African continent, the life expectancy is 54. In parts of the Niger Delta is 46. Right? So when we say Black Lives Matter, that's what it means. Like, Black lives actually don't matter as much. So if you think about that as the simplest way to think about white supremacy, then map that onto universities, and what do you find? Black students do worse, black staff are less likely to be promoted, and then you have this hierarchy in between. And so it replays, and that's not a coincidence.
Yeah.
And then also think about the founding fathers of all the disciplines. What did they believe? Black people were inferior, white people were superior, and there was a hierarchy in between. It's not a coincidence that we kind of made the world in the image of white supremacy from the founding fathers of university. Why would we expect universities to be different? Like, they're actually the home of the actual home of white supremacy. Right? So the whole lie of science was that science was supposed to make things more equal, right? More rational. It actually made things more racist because they scientifically proved that we weren't human beings, right? Like, they actually said, look, because of the shape of our head, shape of our noses, measurements, etc. They don't know, look, you're really not human beings. So it actually made it worse. And those are the universities we're still in. There's a quote from, this wasn't me, I wish it was me, but I can't take credit for this. Deepa Nayak, an organizer in London, says the university is not racist, the university is racism. That's how we think about it. This is the home, really, of scientific racism that we still are dealing with. So yeah, the universities are just a perfect model of the rest of white supremacy.
Yeah. And we both continue to work in them as well.
Oh yeah, because the problem is that it's not like anywhere is better.
Yeah.
So where are you going to go? So we have an organization, Harambee Organization of Black Unity, and unless we can fund it with community resource, that means you're going where to get funded from? Government, charities, etc. Same thing.
Yeah.
Same thing. You still you look at America, where America has the whole, they lots more money, but it's from foundations. Same thing. It's still white supremacy. So unless you can be fully independent, and again, this is a Malcolm thing, unless you can find independent sources, then you're always going to be on a plantation. You're always on a plantation. Doesn't matter. One thing you have differently with university is, like I said, we do have lots and lots and lots of flexibility. There is lots more we can do. And I'll be 100% honest, if I leave the universities, it won't be the university, it will be that we couldn't get enough of us in the university to come through and do critical stuff.
Right.
I expect the problems of the university. It just is what it is. It's the least you have to deal with. The biggest problem for us has always been, can you get enough of us to challenge, to push back, to be critical, to not go along the career ladder? That's the biggest problem, believe me. And so what I actually have come now to use as a metaphor is Professor's slave preacher, which sounds negative, but I promise you, and that is negative, but there's a positive element to it, right? So if you think about what was the point of the slave preacher, it was to pacify the enslaved, right? Teach people a particular way to accept their condition. This is what the university does. It's not coincidental that you have large-scale rebellions in the streets in the 80s, and then in the 90s they say, oh, let's get young people into university. Let's widen participation. Then they'll get debt. Well, they're not debt. Debt's now. It wasn't debt then. But they'll get jobs. They'll feel part of society.
Yeah.
And so that's why we've encouraged so many young people to come into university, particularly black young people. And so part of that role is of the university is to push them into jobs, right? Into work, and then you're more docile. That's all. We have to be honest about that and say that's part of our role. But just like with the plantation preacher, if you actually look at the rebellions, often it was preachers, right? Nat Turner in America, Sam Sharp in Jamaica, because the slave preacher had privileges. One could read. No one else is allowed to read. Slave preachers allowed to read and interpreted the Bible in a very, very different way, right? Slave preacher was allowed to talk to congregations like this. You couldn't do this in any other circumstance. Could you have large groups of Africans together on a plantation? It wasn't allowed. Only in that context. Slave preachers could also travel between plantations. And so they used that privilege to foment revolution. And this is what we should be doing. Unfortunately, we don't do this. Unfortunately, largely what we do is just do the role, play the game, try to get into management, et cetera, and don't do that. But there is so much opportunity in our role to actually foment rebellion. And that's why I stay, because it actually gives you the opportunity to do it.
So how can we do that in a practical sense then?
Well, like I said, it's about organizing collectively to do things, right? To say, well, actually, we're gonna publish differently, write differently. We're gonna bring in different communities into the university. When we do research. So one of the things we do for Black Studies is we get the students when they do their dissertation, and we call it Black Studies project, they have to show the direct benefit it had to community. And this can be like a big benefit, it can be a small benefit. It could be like, we worked in an organization, we did this, etc. Or it could be, we did this, and we did this podcast, and we shared it with this organization. Yeah. But as you cannot pass unless you have demonstrated how your project has had some beneficial impact to community.
Yeah.
Why don't we do that as staff? We have to do that as staff. It's a simple thing, right? We design research that actually has a beneficial impact to community.
Yeah.
Just doing that will be a start. But there's so many resources we have in the uni that we could easily leverage out and do things with.
Yeah.
We just sometimes don't feel we have the confidence to do it. And sometimes don't think it's possible, but it's possible. It's there. And if the more of us that do it, the more possible it is.
Yeah. I mean, I've been doing something with the final year dissertation module actually for the last 4 years with students. And it's about actively, fighting against the tide, looking closely at, what students are experiencing, and working out those sort of practical solutions of how to address the problem by those who are affected by the problem, through co-creation essentially over the last few years. And we've done a lot internally, but we have done some work externally as well. And certainly I could say that students on that module, and we've done those projects, have actually done far better in terms of their marks at the end. So there's definitely something in there. So I know we're going to need to leave some time for some questions from the audience. So perhaps I might just, okay. There's a couple of questions. I'm not sure which one to ask. Okay, revolution. Maybe let's go with that one before we go to questions from the audience then. So I've just got revolution when? Question mark. Yeah.
So actually, I'm writing this Malcolm book, and the Malcolm book is, because Malcolm actually, talks about revolution. Yeah. And really interestingly, Malcolm died 60 years ago, and that's actually not that long.
Yeah.
Right? Most of us probably I won't be around in 60 years, but hopefully younger people, you'll still be here in 60 years. It's not that long, right? 60 years ago, and Malcolm was going around and came to the UK as well and talked about revolution. It didn't sound crazy. Like now, if I'm saying it's a revolution, you're like, what are you talking about? But when Malcolm was talking, it's a real thing. Like, it's not clear the West is going to win. You have revolutionary movements on African continent, Asia, Latin America. The West is actually terrified that the West will not win, right? Which tells you that in just that's a generation, you can really shift, things can change. And the lesson we have to learn is what happened at that point where you had revolutionary potential. Two things happened. One of them was violence, like lots and lots of violence. A lot of people got killed, simple as that. But the more dangerous thing that happened was, and Malcolm calls this benevolent colonialism, is that they conceded a bit. The system conceded a little bit. And said, actually, okay, you have independence because we can't colonize you anymore. We're going to have independence politically, but we're still going to control you economically.
Yeah.
In the UK, I couldn't have been a professor 60 years ago. Forget about it. It was literally impossible. But the laws change, it becomes in. So yeah, it's possible. You can have black professors, you can have black middle class. You may even have a black prime minister in 5 years. If anybody celebrates Kemi Badenoch becoming prime minister, I don't know what to say. But anyway, so, but that's been the biggest change, that we now think that we can make it in this society, right?
Yeah.
We have people migrating from the underdeveloped world to here. We've basically given up on the idea of revolution. So what I say is that, look, you're not going to have a revolution tomorrow, but in the same way that 60 years ago, we went from precipice of revolution to really, really far away from revolution, is not that we can easily go from here to revolution again in 60 years. And you have to think long game. Like, you can't, revolution is not tomorrow. It's about building alternatives, about building organization. And the main thing is about independence, which is why, like, honestly, I will not be, if I am in universities for much longer, you have to call me a sellout. Honestly. And I say that really, 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 because I'll be honest with you, the university is not the solution. Like, I can leverage stuff out of it and I can do other things, but the whole point of leveraging it out is to have independent organization. This is why we have the Harambee organization of Black Unity. This is why we say, look, independent organization is important, and can you leverage stuff to get independent organization? Yeah. And that's what revolution is. Revolution isn't violent, bloody, go kill somebody. Revolution is build alternatives that are sustainable, and that takes a long time. Yeah. And that's the work that we should be doing.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. So maybe, okay, this is a bit of a cheeky question really, but if you were Vice Chancellor, what would you do? And then we'll hand it over to the audience, I think, for questions.
If I was Vice Chancellor,
yeah,
it's unimaginable to me. And this is not, I know Charles is here, so I don't want to be. No, I want to say that's not something that will ever happen, so I don't know. I can't even imagine. If I was Vice Chancellor, what would I do? But no, if I was Vice Chancellor, what would I do? No. I know what I would do. And I think some of that has happened. So you've created an institution for like an actual, like a role that looks at racism in the institution. We say it's kind of straightforward, but no one else does it, so it can't be that straightforward, right? But for me, it would really be about taking those opportunities to leverage resources out of the university. So universities have lots and lots of money, and obviously a lot of it has to go internally with jobs, etc., etc.
Yeah.
But really making a statement to say, actually, can we have centres that are community-based, that do that kind of work?
Yeah.
For example, I've been asking my university for so many, like 5 years, can we have a Black Study Centre that's funded, that can do stuff, that can take our way of doing work and do it? That's the kind of thing you need if you're serious about saying, let's do this differently. Also, I think you have to really challenge the taken for granted practices. So what are the courses? How are we running them? How are we organizing them? Who are we hiring as well?
Yeah.
Right? I mean, one of the simple things internally is promotions. Like, I'm senior enough in my university to know, in my department, faculty, to know who needs to be promoted. Yeah. No, like, it's not that complicated. We can change the system of promotions so that people don't have to apply, but they can apply. But you can also promote people because you have IPRs, we have targets, promote people, right?
Yeah.
There's a load of people out there, untapped talent, who aren't being promoted.
Yeah.
And also, unfortunately, you have to get rid of some people. Like, I'm being 100% honest. Some people need to go, and it's okay. Like, they need to go because that's what it means to change a place. So I definitely think about hiring practices. Definitely think about what resources we can leverage outside, and really think about and really challenge all the staff to rethink. So one of the things I've definitely learned from not this book, The New Age of Empire, was that I previously would have said, like people like Immanuel Kant, you can keep them and add. Nah, something needs to go. Like, what, Immanuel Kant just go. God, you can just get rid. You can actually get rid of some of this stuff. It's just racist nonsense that can just go in the bin. And actually, we can rethink what the foundations of disciplines are. But that does take steer from the top. I think.
Yeah.
That's not going to come from the bottom. So I guess that's what I'm trying to be positive.
Yeah. Thanks, Kehinde.